In this video, I'm going to explain to you what exactly is going on with ARK Invest and the takeover attempt from Resolute, not the stuff that you hear in the mainstream media, the regurgitated, copy-pasted drama bullshit to get you to click the actual story. Now, before we start, let me just say, I hope you guys are doing well, everybody's healthy, spending time with loved ones and family. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Now, if you have a few minutes to listen to me, I'd appreciate it. I don't ask for likes, subs, none of that bullshit. Don't smash anything, please. If you read mainstream media, which is, by the way, lazy and drama-prone, you'd assume the sky is falling. ARK Invest are getting taken over by the evil Resolute. Now, if you don't know what ARK Invest is, let me give you like a 20-second breakdown. ARK Invest manage about $30 billion in assets. They're mostly famous for actually being an early investor in Tesla. They've made a lot of money in Tesla. Cathie Wood or Cathie Wood, depends on how well you know Cathie, is kind of the face of the brand, and she's been killing it, doing a phenomenal job, both explaining the strategy, creating the brand, and also making decisions, because she's also the CIO of the company, the Chief Investment Officer. So she's the brains of the operation and also the face of the operation. So great brand, great performance, a lot of good stuff happening with ARK Invest. They do a lot of ETFs, a lot of products, a good company overall. Now, here's the story that you read in the news. Now that they've made it big, they're about $30 billion in assets because of the Tesla growth spurt. The evil investors from early stage want to take over. So what you read in the mainstream media right now is that Resolute, which was an early stage investor in ARK Invest back in the day, where they had about $40 million of assets under management, are now trying to invoke a takeover clause, because when they invested initially, they had an option to purchase the business from ARK Invest, or at least a controlling share of it. And let me save you a lot of time. You don't have to read the BS they have on mainstream media. Let me give you the actual story with the background research that I did, which they're too lazy to do. Simple. Now, ARK Invest got an investment from a company by the name of Resolute. Resolute put in money early when ARK Invest was a small-time player with about $40 million of AUM, assets under management. Now, 40 million sounds like a lot, but in the financial industry, that's considered hyper small, a boutique kind of style, not a lot of money. If you see some of the other big players, even the 100 million, even the 30 billion doesn't even make them close to being the biggest. So Resolute put in this money into what they considered a startup, at least in the financial industry, and now they're hit it big. They invested in Tesla, they're worth a lot of money, so it seems that Resolute are trying to grab hold of these assets, right? Well, at least that's what mainstream media is telling you, because they're too lazy to dig into this story deeper. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of Cathie and ARK Invest. I think they're doing a phenomenal work. So it's not to knock on them or Resolute. That's just the actual story, the way I understand it. In my opinion, allegedly, blah, 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 doing research. Now, here's the thing. When Resolute actually invested money into ARK Invest, they signed a provision, allegedly, because I haven't seen the agreement, but that's what Cathie's saying and these guys are saying, allowing them down the road until 2021 to exercise an option to buy more shares and essentially to become a controlling shareholder of this venture. Because, you know, when you don't have any leverage and you're trying to get money for your business, you'll pretty much sign anything. You know, you just need the money to survive. And back in the day, ARK Invest didn't have a lot of leverage, so they signed this idiotic provision. I mean, it is what it is. They gave these guys a lot of power, and now it seems that Resolute, once actually ARK Invest are making a lot of money, are trying to grab hold of these assets and kick Cathie out. That's what mainstream media, again, wants you to think. That is not what's happening here. Let me explain. First of all, if you don't know Resolute, and I'm assuming most of you don't because it's a very niche-specific business, let me just tell you that Resolute is not in the business of managing investments. What Resolute actually do, they found capable managers and they invest money in them. They're not in the business of managing the actual portfolios. They neither have the capabilities or the desire to do it. And that thing hasn't changed in years, and it's not different now. So if that's the case, why are they trying to take over ARK Invest? Well, I don't think they do. Let me explain. So here's the deal. When ARK Invest actually signed the deal with Resolute, beyond this option, there was another cherry on top. And that cherry was an exclusivity clause. Essentially, the deal made Resolute an exclusive distributor of ARK Invest products, the ETFs and all of these stuffs they're marketing to investors. That's a lot of money. When you're the sole distributor, you're making a lot of money, especially once the fund becomes so successful as it is now. Until on October 26th, Cathie Wood came out and said, hey guys, we're opening the exclusivity. We want to look at other proposals. Of course, we'll still consider you, Resolute, but we want to see other distributors to decide which is the best one for us and our investors, right? So that came out on October 26th. Now, 2 days later, or basically 3 days later, on October 29th, Resolute decided to all of a sudden invoke their provision to buy the controlling share of ARK Invest. Literally 72 hours later. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me one thing. It tells me that they're bluffing. Now, on the one hand, ARK Invest don't like being tied up by an exclusivity agreement, which is restricting, and it's probably not the best thing for your investors, but they did sign an agreement, and I don't know what kind of an exit clause they have, if any. On the other hand, Resolute are saying, hey, we have this exclusivity. We invested in you when it was a lot of risk. We put in a lot of money. We didn't know if this is going to succeed or not. And now the moment you started getting big, so what's happening here is that Resolute are not really trying to buy ARK Invest from Cathie. I think she holds anywhere from 50 to 75% of the shares. So she owns most of it anyways. They're trying to bully her, to scare her into saying, okay, you can keep the exclusivity agreement. Let bygones be bygones. So it's a power play. They're trying to leverage their provision to get Cathie to back off of opening the exclusivity agreement for the distribution. That is the whole story. Now, the question is not if they'll use it. The question is what kind of price Cathie has to pay for them to back off. And unless Cathie Wood and ARK Invest can prove that this provision for some reason is not enforceable, illegal, and needs to be voided, they'll have to pay something. And by the way, I think if they had an option, they would have used it already. I'm assuming they don't have a way out of this provision. So what's the fee? What's the payment going to be? I don't think Resolute in any scenario take over this company because that would be the worst thing for everybody, including Resolute. Resolute don't have the capabilities to manage these funds. They don't have the manpower, the understanding, or the experience, or the desire to do it. If they get rid of Cathie, they're getting rid of the brains of the operation, the face of the operation. They're essentially going to be killing the chicken for the meat instead of enjoying the eggs. And I'm not saying Cathie is a chicken. I'm just saying as an analogy, right? We could have used different analogies. The tree, you're cutting down the tree for wood, Cathie Wood. See where I'm going here? Anyways, you don't want to cut down the tree or kill the chicken. You want to keep enjoying the fruits or the eggs. So Resolute have no desire, no incentive to actually go ahead and do it. But they'll take the poison pill if Cathie doesn't give them a good price to back off. Simple. This is business. This is hardball. So there are literally 3 options here. Let me go through one by one what might happen here. The first scenario is Resolute backing down. Essentially, in this scenario, Cathie Wood keeps her shares, keeps control, and Resolute stay as the exclusive distributor for the fund. Now, for this to happen, because the trusts have already been breached, they'll have to amend the agreement to ensure that they can't pull that shit again ever in the future. Essentially, Resolute would have to give up that provision. They're not just going to say, hey, we're not going to use it. They'll have to strike it out of the agreement. Otherwise, Cathie won't have it because that way she's hostage to their future demands at any time. Now, let's talk about the second scenario. In this second scenario, Resolute actually pull the trigger, become a controlling shareholder of ARK, and Cathie stays. In this scenario, it's kind of a bad choice for both because they'll have to meddle in her work even if she gets a lot of autonomy. She's going to have a boss over her head, and that boss doesn't know as well as her what to do. There's going to be a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues. The fund is not going to perform as well as it did so far because they're going to break the balance. Cathie's going to be miserable. They're going to be unhappy because they don't like to actually manage these portfolios. It's a horrible situation for everybody. We do have a third scenario. In this third scenario, Resolute execute and Cathie leaves with her people as soon as she can. Basically says, hey, screw you, I'm starting out new. I have a great brand. People know me. They know my name. I'm going to be fine without you. You can take ARK Invest. Now that scenario is probably the worst of them all because in this scenario, Resolute are stuck with a fund they absolutely can't manage. They don't even have access to use Cathie as an advisory provider. And Cathie gets left out of the best deal she ever did with Tesla. So in both parties' interests, option number 3 would be the worst. Option number 1 makes the best sense for both parties. In option number 1, Cathie keeps control, she keeps the actual shares, and they keep the exclusivity agreement. In this option, they back off and they waive any future pretensions to actually try to do that shit again, and she gets to do her thing. Now in this option, they both pay a price. On the one hand, Cathie gives up her ability to open up the distribution for other distributors. It stays exclusive for at least a few more years. And on the other hand, Resolute give up their weapon, their doomsday scenario weapon, where they can come and take over if they don't like what's going on. Both are giving up something that it's not a deal breaker for them to keep this thing going and laying eggs or fruit, whatever example you want. So I believe this option is what actually going to play out. Unless one party decides to kamikaze itself to death, option number one is the option that's going to happen. Essentially, nothing's going to change, neither with ARK or with Resolute. And once again, I find myself as the voice of reason against this mainstream media laziness and drama. This is nothing more than a lover's quarrel inside a company. They'll figure it out. It's actually in both parties' interest to do so. It doesn't make any sense to kill the company or the egg or the chicken or the tree or anybody else. It is what it is. It's quite simply not even a story. As always, huge thanks for our channel members, our Patreons, people who buy our merch. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys in the next video.